time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performance was just lacked that intensity.
If you want to be in with a chance of winning a Gillette starter pack, then all you got to do is get in touch with us on any of our platforms. You can get us on Instagram. We post every Sunday evening about this to remind you an opportunity to enter. Tell us who you think should be in the green, who you think should be in the red, who is like meh in the amber, and you could be in with a chance of winning. It's as easy as that. Owen, where do we start?
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't want to bring the mood down on a great weekend, but we do have to start with the bad, and somebody has to have been bad if things were to be good from the weekend, right?
It's a zero-sum game when you big time sport.
It's exactly it. That's a good explainer of it. So you can see there in the red there this morning are Tottenham Hotspur and Connacht. Lou, let's just get the Connacht thing out of the way first here, because it's kind of like it's kind of like shooting Bambi, isn't it?
No, what are you doing?
It's putting Connacht into the red.
Sorry, you're putting Connacht in the red, right?
Yeah.
So the whole point of going in the red is like you've had a bad time. The things are bad. We've put Man United in the red basically every week for the last ages. FC Hollywood nonsense, right? If you are a Connacht supporter, you are currently experiencing what it means to be alive. Every game you go to, your teams play absolutely sensational rugby, and then a little bit of flaky defence, and then they're involved in like these shootouts. It's exactly what you want, is the experience of being a sports fan. You have hope, you have brilliance, you have like genuine talent coming through who are from your own academy, and some amazing Moneyball style signings, and up against some very good teams, and you're right in it until the very end, and then so you lose. But that's not red for me. That's green. That's alive.
Do you like that, Connacht fans? Do you like that tone of patronisation
There's
there coming from the Leicester fan in the room? Aren't you very good? Aren't you very good, Connacht? You managed to hold a candle to Leicester Tigers and to Stade Francais. All 14 men of Stade.
If you want to go that way, fair enough. I can see how in your cold, clammy results are all that matter Munster upbringing, you've decided that playing 14-man, sometimes 10-man rugby with the ball up your jumper and falling over the line is with the cold biting you and nothing apart from a nip of whiskey to keep you warm on. That's fine, that's fair enough. Dreamy. But the good people of Connacht, they're dreamers. They believe in sport. They believe in the power of a transformative occasion when you go and you feel like part of a group of people whose very existence, the whole organisation, the whole rest of the country has been ambivalent about it. But now they're proving that, we have the skills. That Pat Lam era was not a flash in the pan. We're building on that. And you come along on a Monday morning and you dump on them because that's you've got a cold heart.
It's
interesting.
I think I've said maybe 100, 200 words on Connacht so far, and apparently I've dumped on it. I've just
you put them in the red.
I put them into the red for reasons that are completely unconnected to the reasons that you mentioned there. Connacht play an amazing brand of rugby. They played beautifully yesterday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's a fact. Nobody is saying that Connacht shouldn't be playing the way they're playing. But they've got themselves into two extremely good positions 2 weeks in a row. One of those weeks, it was against 14 men, and they managed to conspire to lose the game. If Connacht have designs on winning silverware, that surely goes down as a really disappointing 2 weeks. Does it not? They'd qualified anyway before the weekend. So what are we actually judging here? Well, what are we? Process, not outcome, Owen. That's what this is. And I think that you can just absolutely look at that. But if we're looking at this in isolation of this Stade game at the weekend, are we just saying they've qualified and brushed it under the carpet, or is it they've qualified, there was actually pressure off and they should have got the job done, especially with an 11-point win against 14 men? I think surely, and they'd a man sin bin themselves for the last 10 minutes, so it got evened up. To a point, and the Connacht players are coming out afterwards and showing real disappointment about it. I just don't know why we have to kind of make any bones about the fact that these are two very disappointing outcomes for Connacht in back-to-back games, which could have been two massive games. Okay. Granted, the difference between them and Bristol is what 6 points, was it, in the end? They may not have even got a higher seeding, but certainly the performances that they've put in, it's disappointing for them that they've got to now play Leinster in back-to-back games. Sure, basically. But I think that the difficulty of programmes like this and all contemporaneous comment on sport is that we live in a continuous now. Long term, Connacht are vastly improved. They have a very clear identity. They know exactly what they're trying to do. They have a brilliant coaching ticket. Bear in mind, this is the first full season of this specific coaching ticket, because the whole backroom team turned over in the off season, and they've
signed up most of the players they wanted. I suspect they would really like to have kept Delan. But I think you've got to feel really good about where Connacht are right now in the long term. I understand in the short term, the 2 defeats are very disappointing. But as I said, they have a style of play. Everybody knows exactly what's happening. There's very ambitious plans for the ground. This is the type of team you would want to know that if I'm going on Friday or Saturday night to the sports ground, I'm going to see this crowd play, and they're going to play this exciting brand, which is going to energise the whole rugby community along the Western Seaboard. And I don't know. I think
that's all true.
I think like if you think back to the start, the glory days of Munster's campaigns in European rugby, they all failed. They were all failures. Like if you were to just judge them on the outcome.
If you went back into the retrospective performance rankings the morning after any of those games, you put them in the red because it's a desperately disappointing moment.
Well, there were some of those games where like they played absolutely sensational end-to-end rugby, and you're like, well. I do think we just need to be careful sometimes about not losing sight of the fact that we as fans and supporters pay money to go and be entertained, and this is highly entertaining because like if you put them in the red after every defeat, right? Like then they might. I'm not saying that your performance rankings have this power, but they might. You know, it's like it's the power of the crowd, and the crowd might be like, well, why are we in the red? Oh, we need to win, and we might just kick the ball to the corners and have 15-man pushover tries.
Obviously, never going to happen. But also, like,
well, it might. That's what Warren Gatland did.
I'm not denying the Connacht are in. If you're zooming out, I'm zoomed right in. I've gone to like 200% here on the weekend.
600, yeah.
Before, like that's all I'm doing. Like I mean,
so close you can no longer see the picture on. The pixels are like they're throbbing in your eyeballs.
It's not exactly like an expert sort of take here. It's just back-to-back weeks, Connacht have come off the pitch disappointed.
I'm sure they are. Like, I'm sure they're disappointed.
If we're talking about are Connacht going in the right direction, let's take the bigger picture outlook on it. Of course, you can't make a case against the direction that they're going in. Of course, Andy Friend has his own stock has absolutely skyrocketed over the last little while. He's done a fantastic job at Connacht, and yes, the brand of rugby is brilliant. Nobody is calling for them to change that up. I just think that they're a team at the moment where they need to be winning those games when they're in that position. They need to show that the swashbuckling rugby is the right way to play because it gets results, and it should have got them results over the last couple of weeks, and it didn't. Like it's going to be a brilliant couple of games against Leinster, you'd suspect. But
look, I mean,
it's a bad draw. It's a bad outcome for them to have to play Leinster in the last 16.
Yeah, or I mean. Carty's saying this is exactly what you want. You want to be putting yourself up against the best teams in Europe to see where you are, to measure them. And he makes the point they were okay. I thought they were really good in the first half against the RDS, in the RDS against Leinster, and then they got blown out in the second half. So if they could just not get blown out and keep it in it, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So I think those two legs are actually going to be really exciting. And in fairness, I think I don't think Andy Friend is sitting in the meeting this morning going, yeah, lads, we should be in the green. But actually, he is zooming in and going, this scrum, this tackle, this alignment is wrong. So
team loses rugby match in the red. It's not exactly.
This is your pitch for a role on the analytics side for
I'd be
Connacht.
very good at that. I'd be absolutely outstanding at that.
Flying Hellfish says, I agree with Cher. I'd rather watch good rugby versus the Xanax bar that is Munster rugby.
I mean, so would I. Like, I mean, it's.
No.
I want to watch the best version of rugby I can. It doesn't mean that I also want to see winning rugby. I want both. Again, why are we settling for grand? Like, why are we saying that we?
No one's settling for grand.
Yeah, we have to get the whip out. And
the context of Connacht is that we have come so far, and we're going to keep going. Claff 88 says, I should be in green for drinking 40 pints and staying out past 8 p.m. Animal of a performance.
That is an exceptional performance. First week back.
Too much, too soon. You peaked already. Who else is in the red?
In the red as well is Tottenham. Tottenham are in the red. They Chelsea becoming the first side to beat Spurs 4 times in one season. Since Chelsea beat Spurs 4 times in one season in 2002. This is like Tottenham are at a really interesting place. Like I definitely felt that. It's supposed to play because like we had John Duggan in the studio with us last Wednesday, Thursday after they got that last gasp win, Stephen Bergwijn, and it just kind of felt that was a corner that had been turned, and it was going to be an interesting sort of moment to see how quickly they can turn that corner, because they were up against a Chelsea team who'd looked much better than them in the EFL Cup just a couple of weeks previously. And yes, it was very harsh to rule out the Harry Kane goal. Yes, Tottenham fans can feel very aggrieved about that, I think. But if you look at the game as a whole, and especially in that second half, there was a gulf between these two teams yesterday. Should we have, at this point, seen performances from Tottenham that are better than the performance that we saw yesterday? Or A, does Antonio Conte need more time? And B, does he need better players? I think the answer to B is definitely needs better players, and he will say that himself. But the problem is he is saying that himself. He is using this quite a lot. Yeah. And I just wonder if the Antonio Conte we thought was coming back to the Premier League would have got a better performance out of that team yesterday than the one we did see. Or is Chelsea perhaps a bogey team in terms of how they set up against Spurs? But this doesn't look like a team that are, on yesterday's evidence alone, that are overly improved compared to before Christmas, back in October, November. A little bit improved, but I mean the Nuno experiment was an absolute disaster. So they were a bit better yesterday than the disastrous version of Spurs. And I'd just like to see exactly where people think these improvements are coming from, or the rate of improvement that this team is seeing.
Well, and again, to zoom out a little bit, the trend at the moment in the Premier League is that you don't get that much time, and that actually relationships seem to go sour much more quickly now than they have done in the past. If you think Dean Smith, who is a Villa man, a Villa fan, who brought the team up, kept them up again, goes on one bad run, bullet, thanks very much, off you go. It looks like Ranieri's on his way out. Nuno, not very long. Rafa, who is here for like a multi-year, this is going to take ages, I've cleaned out the whole staff, I've taken over the job of director of football, and I'm going to put somebody in there who's going to gone. It's like, is there a possibility the Conte thing doesn't work out for Spurs? Is there a possibility that they don't give him the time you say he needs? Because already, what does Daniel Levy think when he keeps seeing Antonio Conte talk about the quality of the playing stock?
Well, I think that it's always a strange dynamic when a club feels in so much debt towards a manager. And I'm not saying that's the reality, but the conversation around the dynamic that exists seems to be Spurs need to impress Conte. You know, Daniel Levy needs to impress him with the checkbook. And, I think it was actually said, it was Martin Tyler who actually said it in commentary yesterday, Spurs need Conte more than Conte needs Spurs. And like that seems to be the conversation around how this is working. And I'm not sure that's a healthy recipe for success. Like, I'm fully sure that Conte's track record as a manager is excellent, and as a result of that, I'm pretty sure he is an excellent manager. But the rate of improvement, it seemed, when he went to Chelsea was much quicker than Spurs, and the reason for that obviously is because he had a better squad at Chelsea than he does at Spurs at the moment. And Conte has always had outstanding players when he's won trophies. Like he says, now is not the right moment to speak. The club know very well what I think in relation to transfers. There is not one transfer market to close the gap. In the last few years, this gap became very big, and now it is not simple to find a solution in a short time. He says we can't solve it in the next transfer market. It's not the reality. You need many years, he says, to actually solve this problem. There's kind of like a bit of a tone here that like Conte is like looking around being like, what the hell can I do?
Yeah.
And I mean, what else can you do? You're the manager. You can try and maybe gather the troops and get a better sum of the parts than what we're seeing. I mean, he was unbeaten in the Premier League until yesterday. This has not been a bad start to Conte's time in charge. Maybe, though, those people who thought that this was automatically going to be a silver bullet for Tottenham, I would suspect that have already changed their view. And that doesn't come down to just the manager. But
he could still finish fourth. I know Manchester United's win, which was a scratchy last minute win, another walk-off win, gives them a bit of breathing space when it comes to the finishing fourth. But I'm not sure Man United have turned a corner. It doesn't feel that way at all, really.
No.
Lingard scored a last minute winner for them earlier in the season. So this isn't new, and maybe Rashford scoring 2 goals in 2 games is a bit new, and maybe that changes things for them. So perhaps they're going to hang their hat on. But you wouldn't be terribly surprised if Spurs bounce back from this and go on a reasonable run. I haven't looked at their fixtures now, so maybe they have
the fixtures are, they've got Southampton, Wolves, Leeds and Everton in the next 5. In the middle of that, though, is Manchester City. Like, that's going to be a very interesting one. What is it, the 19th of February? So that's 3 Premier League fixtures time. But that is a redo on yesterday, because if you make the case that Liverpool, Manchester City and Chelsea are ahead of the pack, then I mean, that's fair enough. But Tottenham should be chasing that pack. There shouldn't be as much of a gulf as we saw at times yesterday between themselves and those three teams. In my opinion, I think Spurs are better than that, even though Conte wants to say that the squad aren't good enough. I do think that they're a little bit better, or they should be a little bit better than they showed yesterday. So
Dele and Ndombele and somebody else is for sale at the moment. And if those 3 signings had hit, you would say, or obviously Dele Alli did hit, but if he'd maintained form, then they could be much closer. You know, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the point he's making about the gap opening in recent years, it's open because their recruitment has been really bad, and their recruitment has not been great for the last decade or so. It's been some hits, but it's been a multiplicity of misses. And if Conte is given time and is going to be backed, and if this is just him laying down the law, and if Daniel Levy says, yeah, okay, fair enough, and they do back him, then I think that this could be transformational. What about the quality of football, though? Is that going to be something that over a period of time comes into more sharp focus? That, like, Spurs traditionally, Spursy isn't just we'll collapse when we're 3-0 up against Man United. It's also we play really good football. You know, we consider ourselves aristocrats. We have a passing, exciting style of football. Conte's football was very functional. He had absolutely sensational players. So Eden Hazard could do something in a game to make you think, wow, this Chelsea team are brilliant to watch. But they weren't actually brilliant to watch over the course of 90 minutes. They would have very hard to beat, never concede. They would win games that were tight games, and they would brutalise you. And that's, you know, that was very successful winning football. However long ago that was, 5-6 years ago. It seems like things have changed a bit in the Premier League.
Well, like, I definitely thought that, like, if we're looking at these top three teams, that they had kind of like elevated the Premier League to a level that the neutrals were getting more enjoyment out of it than ever before. Like, if you take the Chelsea-Liverpool game around Christmas time, the one that Queevy and Kelleher starts, that was an outstanding game. That was an absolutely brilliant game of football. Yesterday felt like 2006, 2007, like early to peak Jose Mourinho years. Like, I mean, it felt like every 4 o'clock game on a Sunday that Chelsea were playing in. It was like, well, it's going to be a tough watch, and Chelsea will ultimately come out on top.
And so Tuchel's doing the same.
Well, that's the thing. It takes two to tango, and, like, I mean,
so are they getting a bit of a free pass here? Should they actually be in the?
Well, maybe it's actually just Liverpool and Manchester City who are actually elevating things to a whole other level, and maybe it's not actually not at Chelsea at all. It's just Liverpool and City. Like, I mean, the counterpoint, and the one that kind of supports yours, is that if you're looking at some of the best games of the season, I think Tottenham is probably in one of the top 3 games. Like the game against Liverpool, the 2-2 before Christmas, was an absolutely brilliant game of football. But is that because Liverpool were dictating the terms in that, just like they were against Chelsea a couple of weeks ago, and maybe to a certain point had a big hand in the game against Manchester City earlier on in the season when Foden and Mo Salah were so good in that game? It just kind of felt that with the Liverpool and City dominance of the league has been good for the neutral, and I know Manchester City's style gets criticised, but against Liverpool, the style that's made that fight has been excellent.
Yeah.
Yesterday felt like a throwback to the dark age of being good for the neutral.
The only slight caveat is goals really change games. If you look back and think to was it 3-0 in the end that Arsenal hammered Spurs? Like, Spurs played really well in that game, but just didn't take any chances. Arsenal didn't play great, took all their chances, and the result dictated how everybody felt about the two teams in the immediate aftermath of it. If Spurs had scored in the first half, they might have been able to put a bit of pressure on that Chelsea side in the second half. So, look,
100%. I mean,
just saying, when Conte is bitching about it afterwards, he probably has a reason to. It's 7:56 this morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're streaming live across YouTube. We're live on OTB Sports Radio, and of course, you can get us on Twitter and Facebook as well. We have suggestions. Craig Breen should be in green. He finished 3rd in the Monte Carlo Rally. Craig Breen, first full season. It's going really well for him. That's absolutely sensational. Moto 46 in touch with that one. Owen says the Bengals. Maguire says the Bengals. First playoff win for 31 years. It's not, though. Did they not win last week as well? Were they not in the playoffs last week?
It's good. It's a good point.
So it's their second playoff win, but it's their first divisional game maybe in 31 years. First championship game in 31 years. Brian Rossiter says hurling. Last quarter of Ballyhale Thomas is the best you'll see at any level. Hunger, intensity, passion. They should
all the boxes ticked.
Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. And also last minute incredible free. So we're moving on.
Yeah, just in the grand, we've touched on this at the top of the show already, but it feels that the definition of grand will be the 2023 All-Ireland Football Championship, as a result of what happened at Central Council at the weekend, where Proposal Green is going to go forward to Congress next month, and it'll probably pass. And yes, Proposal Red is better, but Proposal Green is a more passable motion, and as a result we're getting a grander, better but not great championship next year, where you'll have a bit more games at the best time of the year, but nothing that will transform the championship completely. You'll still have blowouts in the provincial championship, and there will still probably be.
So we're going to have pre-season competitions, league, championship. Sorry, we're going to have pre-season competitions, league, provincial championships, All Ireland series.
Yeah, like
and the All Ireland series is like a glorified Super 8s, except it's straight knockout.
Yeah,
16.
Yeah, like I mean, it's like obviously not within your group. It's knockout, but once you get out of
There's a round robin.
There's a round robin.
Oh, yeah.
So it is kind of Super 8sy.
It's just a Super 8, except it's expanded Super 8s, it's Super 16s.
Super 16s. It's kept all the bad parts of the football championship and just added good bits to it instead of changing the bad bits into good bits. So like I mean, as we said earlier, it could be a stepping stone towards better things. But look, it's a step in the right direction. And as we know from last year, it's not necessarily easy to get these things over the line.
No, the thing is though, it's a step in the right direction, but it's the only direction we're ever going because change is once every 20 to 25 years. So you better get used to this. Right, we'll have Tom Parsons on the show tomorrow to talk to us. The GPA backed this as well, which was unusual because it was very different from the original proposal that they did back. So, sure, look, it's been decided, and who are we to ask? Ours is not to reason why, ours is just to do and die. What's in green?
We got to start with the NFL in the green. Just this incredible weekend of action. Chiefs Bills, obviously last night while you were sleeping, probably the greatest combination in football. Does it again with an unbelievable conclusion. Chiefs going to the championship game, and then in the earlier game, the Bucks getting beaten by the Rams.
They were getting blown out. It was an absolute annihilation. It was a humiliation for Tom Brady. He got his first unsportsmanlike conduct penalty in his entire career, and if you don't know, he's 44. He's been playing a while. They keep banging on about it. Basically, what happened was Von Miller headbutted him in the head with his, so Von Miller's like this incredible athlete, explodes into his face after the ball is gone, and helmet to helmet, and because the ball is just gone, they don't call late contact, and Brady turns around and goes, "Are you effing kidding me?" And the guy throws his flag, and we didn't see that part. The referee comes out and goes, "Unsportsmanlike conduct number 12, Tampa Bay." I'm like, hey, that's Tom Brady. What? And then they show you there's like these long lingering shots. It's like the Vietnam. It's like there's a platoon where not Charlie Sheen, his brother, whatever you call him, the mad one.
I can't remember.
Charlie Sheen's mad brother.
I can't remember his name.
Does anybody know? He's the star of Three and a Half Men. Oh no, it was Charlie Sheen. Sorry, yeah, not Emilio Estevez. Yeah, no, thank you. That shot of him slowly dying, that was Tom Brady at this. He got a little cut lip, and you're thinking like, this is bad. We're gonna. It's how a great career like this always ends: humiliation.
Yeah,
and all his best players are dropping the ball, and he's getting beaten up. And so I went to bed. What happened?
I mean, the comeback almost happens. Like, I mean, it's an interesting. I tried to jot down just all my emotions I felt watching Tom Brady yesterday. Like at the start of every Tom Brady game of the playoffs, you're like, I want this guy to lose so badly. Last night things get up and running. You're like, yes, this is very good. This is very, very good. The Rams start slicing through them. You're like, yes, this is getting even better. Please run up a big scorer here, embarrass him. Then it gets to a point where you start laughing at him. You're like, they may as well make the score 28-3. They may as well go for a 2-point conversion at one point and make it 28-3 because that'll be funny because that involved a comeback. That of course is not going to happen here because the Rams are absolutely killing them. And then you remember that comebacks are kind of the greatest thing about sport, and part of you is like, I want to see this comeback happen. I'm rooting for Darth Vader here. Let's do this. Then Rams fumble the ball late on, and all of a sudden you're jumping up and down, humming the Imperial March as this thing is absolutely happening. Then it happens. And then you kind of feel this weird sense of guilt about what you've done, about rooting for Tom Brady because the comeback is about to happen. And then there's one last chance for your soul to be saved, and there's one last try for the Rams, and the ball goes between the posts, and you're like, all is well in the world. And possibly the best way for this to have happened is for the taste of success to come back to the mouth of Tom Brady and for it to be snatched away right to death. Glorious cruelty. I
mean, it's not a bad way for him to go out. If he does go out, it's like everything was on display. The fact that he was down and out, beaten physically, emotionally, psychologically, absolutely hammered, and then found a way to get his team right back in, and his defence couldn't get a stop. He did everything he needed to do, and then the defence coughed up 2 massive passes to make it a gimme kick for a fairly flaky kicker. Even if they just managed to get him to the halfway line, it was a 51-yard kick, there would have been overtime. And the other thing is the other game finishes, it goes to overtime. I think they left Patrick Mahomes 12 seconds to get into field goal range, and he did it. So the Bills are going to feel, I think they were 13, 14 points down at various stages across the game too. But that did feel like it was probably the Super Bowl, the game that happened in the middle of the night here in Ireland that none of us got to watch. So that might prevent you from needing to watch it. We didn't talk about Aaron Rodgers. who all the jokes are he was immunised from the Super Bowl, and I mean, who am I to
not laugh?
Exactly. It was sensational. His sadness, his salty tears were absolutely. No player in history has lost 4 playoff games to the same team apart from Aaron Rodgers.
Wow.
To the San Francisco 49ers.
And I mean, obviously,
his dream growing up was to play for the 49ers. The 49ers had the first pick the year he came out in the draft. They snubbed him, which was idiotic. And he was like, they're going to regret this forever. And he's never beaten them in the playoffs. He's played them 4 times and he's 0-4. And he's by far the best team at the weekend. Couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. Couldn't throw one pass. We didn't throw a pass. Immunised.
Blame the snow.
3 minutes past 8 here this morning on OTB AM. What else?
We just got to finish up here with TJ Reid, because TJ Reid is TJ Reid. I mean, like, you'll have seen this on television possibly yesterday.
A lot of people won't have seen it.
And if
Sunday
not,
afternoons, what did they miss?
Well, there's a great view here from Shane Keegan, who was at the match, and he tweeted his over-the-shoulder, essentially, view of TJ Reid's last gasp goal. So
we haven't seen this angle, right? This is not the TV angle, the opposite. Look at. So it's in 4 minutes into the 3 minutes of stoppage time.
You might just play this a second time, and when we play it a second time, watch the goalkeeper and watch Colin Fennelly in the yellow helmet in front of the goalkeeper with his hands in the air. That is some good screen work right there. Keeper has to run off his line, and it doesn't necessarily go right through the spot that he left, but it goes pretty close to it. I mean, TJ Reid is obviously the magician here, innit? But I mean, Colin Fennelly getting nice and big, knowing exactly where he's standing, plays a pretty significant part in the goal, you'd suspect.
They had a man sent off in the Leinster Championship, and they were dead and buried, and they came back from the dead, and they blew out, was it Rhinos in the semi-final in Leinster? I want to say, if I'm wrong about that, apologies, but they have been dicing with death all the way through, and now they're through to the final. Ballygunner.
Exactly, and as we said earlier on, it is the final that everybody wants to see. Like, there's some unbelievable talent on both sides in this one, and like, I mean, one of the stories from yesterday is obviously the collapse of St Thomas's. But again, they can feel so aggrieved about the penalty first off. Like, I just think it's like I guess the goalkeeper didn't really stand a chance when it came to the penalty when TJ's standing over it. But possibly in that scenario, if it was a keeper and 2 people either side of him,
build a wall. I mean,
or just build a wall or something. Like, it's kind of like that.
For instance, like that where it is last. Like, there's nothing. You can't be stopped building a wall.
But you also can't be stopped from walking in front of the goalkeeper's eye line. Like, I mean, what's your reaction to that? It kind of feels sometimes as if like the wall sometimes hinders the goalkeeper in a close-in free kick in football. It felt at this point that maybe the not that it was overcomplicated, but they shot themselves in their own foot a little bit. But again, it's an absolute bullet from TJ Reid.
Andrew Dawson says Tralee Warriors should be in green. I think we should have had a whole separate section for Donaghy that's not traffic light system, that's some kind of super traffic light system where there's a gold, where he's just in gold for what has happened, where like he is playing at the top end of Irish sport week after week at the moment, at Tom Brady's age nearly. I'm giving you a few years there, Kieran, but like still having a massive impact. And his Instagram was lit with pictures, and I like pictures of everybody who he knew who had helped him along the way. Really sensational from Kieran. So congratulations on, it obviously means so much to him. It's clear that there's so much of his life invested in basketball that winning for his community, I mean, I can just imagine what it must have felt like if he'd been able to do a double with them, but not to be this year. But you wouldn't count him out for next year, would you?
I don't think the double was even close to the top of the mind after you win a national cup, and so long as well since the last time they got over the line. It's an unbelievable weekend, and actually, I guess getting back to that somewhat is not something that a whole pile of people would have seen 5 or 6 years ago, and he's been a huge part in creating such a fan culture around that team that's been renewed over the last little while. And Saturday night looked like a pretty good night, to be honest with you, and I think they'll be celebrating that one for a while.
And as restrictions opened up as well. Good morning, y'all. Up Longford, just got our 3G broadband installed. Bill's game just finished 10 minutes ago for me. What a game, he says. Well played, Mr. Quinna. You are bang on. 7 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. That is this week's performance rankings. Mark Lawrenson is up next.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.